Dear students, good evening. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 29th August 2020. The first article for discussion is In Act of God, Coercive Not Cooperative Federalism. Remember these words, coercive federalism and cooperative federalism. When center and states act together as a team, cooperating with each other for collective goals, we described that as cooperative federalism. When center is acting like a big brother or a boss and trying to force the states to its decisions, we are using the word coercive federalism. What the author says is the federalism is transforming from cooperative to coercive. The GST enactment is an example for cooperative federalism in India. But today, the Sitharaman finance minister stating Act of God is an example for coercive federalism. If you understand this, let's get into the article. This article is written in the context of yesterday's GST Council meeting, in which Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman stated that COVID 19 is an act of God. So, no GST compensation can be paid from its kitty. She clearly stated that the compensatory cess collection is only 22% of the 3 lakh crore that has to be paid to the states. So the remaining 2 lakhs 34,000, if I am not wrong, that 2 lakhs 34,000 crore rupees, it is not taking responsibility for payment, and it has requested the states, center has requested the states to collect that from RBI as a loan. In this scenario, the states have many complaints. So, to understand this, let us go to a little background. GST is a major tax reform happened in this country where tax on goods and services brought into one single tax. Without the cooperation of the states, it would never have happened. Prime Minister Modi announced one nation, one tax by taking forward the GST tax reform, and the states were offered this compensation to take them on board. That's how the cooperative federalism worked. In this case, 101 Constitutional Amendment Act, you need to remember, it states that Parliament shall by law, on the recommendations of GST Council, provide for compensation to the states for loss of revenue arising on account of implementation of GST for a period of 5 years. See the word carefully which the center is quoting now. Loss of revenue arising on account of implementation of GST. So what the center says is, today's loss of revenue to the states did not come because of implementation of GST. It is because of COVID-19, which is unforeseen by any one of us. So that's why the responsibility will not lie as per this law under the center, onto the center. What is the state's view? States say that why can't the center take the loan and pay it to the states? Then what is the problem center is expressing? If center's burden increases, debt increases, it will get reflected poorly in the credit rating agencies. It will affect the investments in long run. And second, states complain it like this. Whenever the compensatory cess collected was high, is that money given to the states? No. When the collection is high, you are not paying it to the states. When the collection has fallen, you are asking the states to take the responsibility. You are playing to the advantage of the situation. And second thing, cess on petroleum products. Initially, it was 50-50. 50% went to center, 50% to the states. Now it has become 60-40. The center's share has increased at the cost of the states. Cess and surcharge is the most resorted route to collect the taxes. You know that if tax imposed is on the divisible pool of taxes, on any tax on the divisible pool of taxes like income tax, etc., then it is shared with the states on the recommendation of Finance Commission. But cess and surcharge are non-shareable. So center gets all the money from cess and surcharge. After Modi came to power, the center is more resorting to cess and surcharge rather than raising these taxes in the divisible pool. Next complaint is more severe. Previously, decisions in GST Council are unanimous. But today, most of the decisions are being made by majority. From unanimity, we move towards majority. Obviously, the power is in the hands of the BJP at center and also in many of the states BJP in power. So BJP can easily bulldoze any kind of opposition in GST Council today. In that way, the cooperative federalism where unanimity prevailed before has shifted to coercive federalism where the single party is able to bulldoze and silence all the other voices that are existing. In this article itself, you can clearly see Assam Finance Minister, where the government belongs to the BJP, says that the center need not have the responsibility for pandemic and center need not pay the compensation. A state finance minister is saying that is what is the tragedy here. Next is conventional dissonance. Today, American elections and campaigning is at its peaks. A Republican candidate, the President Trump, he is playing again the divisive politics. He is deliberately alienating the minorities to consolidate the majority vote. In the previous elections, he played the same trick, that is to divide especially white working class population. And he raised the fear of immigration, loss of jobs. His major plank is to fight socialism and globalization to make it favorable to Americans, to create jobs and retain jobs for Americans. So a similar pitch he is making now. This year mail-in voting also has come up. He also started criticizing mail-in voting. In this context, majoritarian plank is happening across the world, or consolidation of the majoritarian vote is happening across the world. This kind of nurturing the majoritarianism is not good for democracy. Democracy is a place an individual has to be respected as an individual, as a person, irrespective of his identities. But here, a person is being divided as majoritarian or minoritarian, and his rights and his sense of dignity, equality are getting undermined based on where he is getting placed. That is the problem, that is the challenge democracy is facing today. The next article, national well-being and the counts that matter. This is a very poorly written article. I took almost 15 minutes to read this article. What author is trying to say is, as on today, we are trying to count census, population and various social characteristics through census once in 10 years. But we need to collect the data, demographic data from other forms, in other forms. So one is birth weight. Next, what is the weight of the baby, weight and height ratio at 5 years, and number of births in the country, school completion rates, women in formal employment, etc. So when we collect that regularly, we will understand the status of human capital in India. Based on these indices, we will understand the status of women, nutritional levels in the country, quality of human resources, gender equality, everything we can understand. So that's why government has to make a serious effort to collect, digitalize and store this particular data. That is what is the author's opinion. The next is targeting Hezbollah. You know, Lebanon is a very complicated country, and Beirut blast has happened recently, and the country is going through a severe economic crisis. So there is a political and also an extremist outfit called Hezbollah. Remember, Israel and the Western countries labeled Hezbollah as a terror organization, but I am carefully using an extremist political organization because I may differ in opinion with others. So, Iran is a Shia-dominated country. Hezbollah is also a Shia group, Shia militia group. And the next, Syria is also, the ruler is a Shia. Mr. Assad is a Shia. After the end of war in Syria, Assad is becoming assertive now. So Hezbollah, Iran have helped the Assad regime to retain its position. Now Israel fears that a new axis is developing between Iran, Syria and Hezbollah, which can pose it a security challenge in the future. And previously Israel and Hezbollah fought it tooth and nail and finally able to make Israel withdraw from Lebanon, especially southern Lebanon. In this context, Hezbollah is a formidable force in Lebanon, and Israel was unable to defeat it till now. Now Israel started bombing the Hezbollah places, and Hezbollah started, stating that it will take the revenge on it. In this context, what it says is, it's a lose-lose situation. Everyone are going to be the losers, no one will be the winners. In the existing economic and political situation in Lebanon, better Hezbollah sits silent. And Israel also has faced 2 wars with Hezbollah and nothing has come out of it. So, peace has to prevail in the region. Coming to the news, states can apply to UGC, the University Grants Commission, for extension of exam deadline. Many of the states want to postpone the exams or cancel the exams and directly promote the candidates, students. Supreme Court said is, under Disaster Management Act, states have necessary authority to request the UGC for postponement of the exams, cancellation of the exams. But automatic promotion of the children without examinations can compromise the merit and standards. So that's why Supreme Court said that's a no-go area. Next, realism should shape India's China's policy. If there is any article tomorrow on India-China relations, you can quote this particular opinion stated by Mr. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister and a career diplomat before. He wrote a book, The Indian Way. In this, he has given the following opinions. India and China both are rising. Now, they need to accommodate each other. There is a space for both of them to grow simultaneously, but they being neighbors, that is the conflict over here. So, a equilibrium has to arise and they have to manage respective rises amicably. This search for equilibrium between these two countries can be an infinite process. Second, if you see the Deng era, hide your strength, bide your time, never claim leadership. These are the words he said. So China shall grow silently. It shall wait for its opportunity. According to Mr. Jaishankar, that opportunity has come up in 2009. There was economic crisis, and second, American invasion of Iraq. Third, a new regime has come up in USA. So this is where America's position in the world started getting diluted. So an economic recession has started in America and swept the entire world. So then China saw that as an opportunity to come into light to show its force to the world. Next is, today India has to manage a powerful neighbor while ensuring its own rise. We have to objectively assess the power of our neighbor rather than being emotionally carried away on the incidents happening at the border. Coming to the border question, Mr. Jaishankar says that the peace cannot prevail without settling the border question, or at least the peace at the border can ensure engagement with other areas. 1962 war where India lost, he says, it is not just the India which lost, it is the very relationship between these two countries is lost. So, if you come to the trade balance, it is highly skewed in favor of China. So, we have lot of trade deficit. It means that we are importing more than what we are exporting. So, in a skewed trade balance, economic relations cannot prosper and sustain. So, this has to be addressed. The Chinese system is called state capitalism. So, world is unable to decipher what is this state capitalism and how it works. Remember, communism, what it has come from, when Mr. Marx spoke about communism, the base of the communism is economic exploitation. To bring in economic equality, there has to be communist power. Politically, communism is suggested, political communism. But today, the base is capitalist in China, and the superstructure, which is a political structure, it is communist in China. So economy, to serve the economy, polity is not there. To serve the polity, economy is becoming visible in China. This is a deviant communism. That's how I call it as. So these are the points expressed here. Next is, Japan's PM Shinzo Abe quits, citing health reasons. Can we expect any minister quitting in India citing health reasons? Are MLA quitting on citing health reasons? Probably not. So that's why they are called Japanese probably. So Mr. Abe, he has brought in certain dramatic changes as the longest serving Prime Minister of Japan. First, he focused on three things: rules based international trade, and he wanted to promote Trans Pacific Partnership against the China's RCEP. And he is the first person who coined Indo Pacific. Previously, it was called Asia Pacific. Now, that is Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean has to meet. The great oceans has to meet. That is what he suggested. So, Indo-Pacific, bringing India central to the foreign policy of various nations, was suggested by him. And next, he pitched Japan to be a guardian of global commons. So, with regard to freedom of navigation in international waters, etc., always Japan was supportive for that, even in the case of South China Sea. And he has to be remembered in the Indian context for Quad. The Quad, what are those four countries? Japan, India, Australia, USA. And he is one of the first person who proposed. At that point of time, another person was George Bush. The US-Japan alliance got strengthened like never before under Mr. Shinzo Abe. Next, Japan's constitution is called pacifist constitution. After Second World War, when Japan lost, MacArthur Constitution has come into existence. According to that, Japan has to renounce war. Japan shall not officially maintain armored forces. So in that case, he wanted to move away from that position of pacifist constitution. During his reign, I don't use the word reign, during his prime ministership, he has allowed Japan to participate in military exercises on a foreign soil and allowed the deployment of Japanese forces in other countries. So he tried to shun that pacifist image. However, there is a little public support to it in Japan itself. And recently, certain issues going for war museum that is also become controversial, that we will see in another context. NTA has taken all safety measures. You know, NEET JEE exam is about to be conducted. In this context, Education Minister Mr. Ramesh Nishank says these things. All safety precautions were taken. Second thing, the learning enhancement survey, that is the point which I am looking over here. It says that more than 20% of the students in CBSE schools do not have necessary tablets or mobile phones to watch online class. This is digital deficit in India, which can lead to learning deficit. That is the point which I want to have. Finally, why permit ethafone usage? So it is nothing but ethylene. This ethafone chemical is expected to release ethylene, which is expected to ripen the fruits. Previously, High Court of Telangana clearly warned fruit vendors on using carbide. Carbide is cancerous. This ethafone also has insecticides and chemicals. That is where the High Court states that this also needs to be banned. And it has suggested the center to ban this particular chemical.